For a second, I'm like, oh, we're about to have a HIPAA violation. He's like, I'm calling with your test results.
Clean as a whistle.
Yeah. Welcome to this week's episode of That Car Show. We discuss April Fool's jokes, car tattoos, TAG Heuer's return to Formula One, Singer and Gunther Werks, E36 M3s, Porsche's Carrera T versus the GT4, and whatever happened to Volkswagen. Tune in, relax, and remember, always be driving. And welcome to this week's episode of That Car Show. The gang is all together. Various pre-recording conversations, but we'll save those for after hours. Welcome, gang. How are we doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. Yeah, good to see you guys.
Doing good.
Great to see you guys.
We've got a bit of an interesting agenda this week, but I wanted to kick things off with some news articles. Firstly, we've just had April Fool's Day.
Yeah.
And I think this wins April Fool's. It was very imaginative.
Yeah,
right?
like maybe forever.
And also, it was an imaginative for the nation that brought it together, who are not normally associated with April Fools and not normally associated with comedy in this sort of way. And the winner was Porsche. I know. Did you folks see this new offering for Porsche?
The color match.
Did you see it, Ryan?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. The April Fool stuff came on pretty hard and heavy this year compared to years past. I don't know, maybe it's a sign of the times, but
It really did. And there was one.
I think.
There was one I just learned today was an April Fool's. It was so good that I didn't even know. I was just like, oh, okay, all right. It was so subtle.
Yeah. And you don't know whether to like these posts or not, because if they're not April Fools, like, you can like it, but if it is April Fool's, you're the fool because you believed it.
Well,
right.
So or you could be like me and had a new Autoblog article come out on April Fools about can an enthusiast go electric, and have people comment April Fools.
Yeah.
No.
Wow.
I hope that wasn't planned, but anyway.
That's actually amazing timing where you're like, I hadn't planned an April Fool's joke, but it worked out.
So Porsche made this announcement that they were opening up a ink clinic, and you could have a Porsche tattoo of your car on your arm. And what's more, they had a whole wall, so you could even select a paint sample color.
I love that.
It was pretty clever for the Germans, right?
That is good.
Color match tattoo ink that's next level April Fool's.
Yeah.
Not a lot of German comedians out there that come to mind immediately. So that good on them.
Maybe they hired an American agency to do it.
Must have. I thought it was great though, because to your point, it's sort of there's a fine line, and the best ones are ones that could almost be true, right? And the first time I read it, I didn't realize it was April Fool's, and I thought, well, it's got to be a temporary tattoo. That makes sense, right? Like that's okay, right? But
there's loving the brand and loving the brand, isn't there? And
yeah.
When I was working at Dirtfish, one Saturday a guy turned up who had been multiple times. So those who are not familiar, Dirtfish is a rally school up in Seattle. He had the Dirtfish logo as a tattoo.
That's commitment.
That is commitment. I mean, you didn't get a discount or anything, but...
my God, you got to give him something. Right?
They're like, if it was on your forehead, we could work something out, but...
But would you ever love a brand like that much, or even an artist that you follow to get a tattoo? Do either of you have tattoos?
I do not.
Lindsey?
No. I think
what a vanilla band of misfits we are.
Yeah.
Right?
I got a good friend of mine who now has tattoos, but when I knew her early on, she was like, well, you wouldn't put a bumper sticker on a Ferrari, would you? Which is a good point.
Right. Excellent point.
But as she aged, is she now an 88 Mondial, or what does she equate herself to? Like, is it okay now?
Yeah, I think she's more of that Ferrari Enzo Ferrero. Did you see that? The one that went to quite
God, I hope she doesn't listen, Dan. That's
she's like, I'm an unrestored early 90s, so I figure some tattoos. It's about time.
Yeah, there's no chance she'll be listening. But would you ever get, have you ever thought about a tattoo?
I want sleeves or nothing, and that's my problem. And I don't have the arms for sleeves, so this will never happen.
Or nothing.
Yeah. Well, I think that on the right person is a good look with a nice Rolex on the wrist. That looks pretty tough, right?
Yeah, there are some people where I don't like tattoos in general, but there's some people where you look at them and you go, like that is what you're supposed to look like.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
they carry it
yeah.
out. I mean, like I have my friend Ariel, Babes and Classics in LA. She's got purple hair now. And we were talking about it a couple of years ago, and we were both laughing because we're like, obviously it's not natural, but that's her hair color. Like that is supposed to be her hair.
Yeah. Isn't that?
So there's some people where they just, with, like you said, Ryan, and it has to be like the full sleeves, whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something about the commitment and the confidence.
Or it's the
You know.
fuck it all of getting older, pardon my language, right? And
Yeah.
I think that's the move. Like, I'll be 50 this year. I'm getting to that point. Like, well, who am I not getting tattoos for, right? I mean, why am I not jumping out of an airplane, right? Like, I mean, I'm over the hump here, right? Like,
Right. It's time to sleeve up this business. Come on.
I don't, but yet I am such a non-committal. That's a big commitment, right? And,
Yeah.
I mean, it's an expensive one as well, right?
it's expensive.
Well, and then if you decide you want it removed, it's expensive and painful.
True.
Yeah.
I mean, even Pete Davidson's having them removed. And then you see these guys in El Salvador or whatever. That's like, I don't know. I don't want to be rounded up with a Porsche tattoo.
They're like clearly illegal activity.
Yeah,
Get in there.
Yeah.
There is a cheat here. You can get these sleeves that are made of like nylon that are tattooed.
That's
and
right.
You can put them on, and no one realizes, like close up, like you're in a bar at night. People think you're tatted up to the max, but the reality is it's just the garment.
Well, and they make, Titus Welliver was talking about this, I think on Spike, maybe the second to last time he was on. They make really high quality, long lasting temporary tattoos now, which is a great tool. Like if you have a child that's saying they want a tattoo, that's a great way to test it out. Or maybe like, compromise. We're not going to do permanent ink, but you get to experience what it's like and see what it's like to go through life with a tattoo on and kind of try that out.
Yeah.
So when you say like long life, is it like 2 years or?
No, I think
what
it's like
is-
6 months,
So
but
yeah,
it's like
probably good.
they do last and they look
Yeah.
real. It's not like, the temporary tattoo
Yeah.
that lasts like a day.
Right.
Dan, when did you get your teardrop removed from under your eye?
Well, I was going to say, if we get to 10,000 followers, I'll get a temporary tattoo in the last 6 months of the logo. I won't get it
Hey,
on my butt. I'll get it somewhere. more concealed.
Somewhere we'll see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have some suggestions for what you could have tattooed at.
Yeah.
I kind of like that idea. I used to work with a gal who had a manual shift pattern on the inside of her wrist. And I'm like, that's kind of fun. I would definitely do that as a long-lasting temporary tattoo.
Yeah.
But I think you can also buy like temporary sleeve tattoos on Amazon or whatever. I've seen people do that just for fun.
Yeah.
I think there's something about getting tattooed middle age later in life because they're going to stay nicer longer too, right? Like you're already stretched out.
That's true. You don't have to worry about image drift, and you're like, this is not what I went in for.
The tattoos look like they're out of register, right?
Yeah.
Very
You know
cool.
anything about printing, but yeah.
But yeah, to
it's-
answer the question, Dan, I have not run across anything yet that I would want with me permanently.
and that's it, right? Like
Yeah.
that's
We're all Ferraris here, aren't we?
Yeah.
There was a time I was really into Audis.
You could have been a permanent brand ambassador.
There we go. So anyway, congratulations to Porsche for their, comedic April Fool's joke, which I think was a good one. So
It was a really good one. Did you
you
guys?
see-
There was
ahead.
another one from Kindred Motorworks. Did you guys see their post?
I know them.
And
yeah.
it was 4 cars, and they did it with such a straight face, tone wise, that I didn't realize right away. The first one was a Pontiac Aztec. The second one I did not recognize, and it was like one of the lemon cars that they memorialized in one of the Cars movies. The third one was a Gremlin, and the fourth one was a 5th gen full-size white Bronco. So of course I was like, this is amazing.
I remember watching that chase live. That's what you're getting at.
Yep.
Yeah.
Me too.
Long time ago now.
Yeah, because I was
Did you see
and
the
I was
other-
driving a white Bronco at the time too.
not in LA, I hope.
No, in Orange County, but they came down to Orange County. They went right by where I lived.
Did you and OJ have like a Jeep Wave or like?
Luckily, I was not on the road at the time, but he went, like, my parents were out and he went right by. I could see
wow.
on the freeway. I'm like, that's where they are. And he just drove right by.
Well, it's time to start planning for next year, apparently, because, like I said, some people were pretty good, pretty creative this year. A lot of friends with unique cars that were, all of a sudden came up for sale, right?
Yes.
It's
Those are always funny.
yeah.
Because you have that moment of panic, like, oh no, what happened to so-and-so? Or do I want the car? Or
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. What else do we know?
What else? Watches. We talked about tattoos, natural progression to watches.
yeah.
So this year, there's a new sponsor. Oh, we're all
Got my Sheffield Spikes car radio.
You guys down.
Sheffield, what's up? Oh, fancy boy.
That's
That's a beautiful watch, though.
Yes.
Wait, Dan,
you.
for those of us that can't see, what is it?
It is a green dialed Rolex Datejust. That was a gift to myself for my birthday last year. So
Happy birthday indeed. That's awesome.
Yeah, but it's good to see that you guys
are single, ladies, just saying.
I haven't got any money. It's all in a watch.
I do have this green watch, though.
Right, yeah. Well,
that's a beautiful
this
thing.
month anyway. Let's see when it gets put on.
It is beautiful. And it's
Yeah.
very, very timely, since I feel like this year is the year of the green car, and I've started to see green watches, too. So you're right on trend.
Yeah, it wasn't I can't say it was planned. It was the only one available in the dealership. And if anyone knows anything about Rolex dealerships, having watches in stock right now is a bit of a premium. So
that is the best color, though, on that.
It's beautiful.
So.
Thank you. But TAG have taken over from Rolex as the F1 sponsors. It's part of the big wider group. So if you've watched any of the races this year, Louis Vuitton is sprayed all over like the track. It's on all the walls.
Sprayed is a good way to.
Yeah.
Yeah. The best thing.
It's a good description.
Tinkled the brand all throughout the.
They have the greatest phrase. Let me just quickly find it. So I don't know if you guys are sat down. Victory travels in Louis Vuitton.
Oh.
Okay.
So the trophies now have cases that are all Louis Vuitton.
I think a lot of cocaine probably travels in the.
Yeah. Bags of money travel in Louis Vuitton.
That's right.
But TAG have taken over the sponsorship from Rolex.
Yeah.
And as a result, this week there is an event called Watch and Wonders, which takes place in Europe. And they've announced a whole new line of F1 themed watches, and these hark back to, I think it was the 80s and 90s when they were sponsoring F1 and they had these kind of classic watches.
Yeah.
And for TAG, they're entry-level watches, so you talk about $2,000, which is still expensive for a watch,
Right.
but they're going to reissue all these Formula One themed watches, and there was an announcement this week about that.
And they're Formula One themed watches from TAG Heuer that they've announced.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
I love those old F1 watches. In fact, I think they made them up maybe through the early 2000s or the late 90s. I remember my buddy Andy had one. It was the Indy 500 one, actually, now come to think about it. It was such a cool watch. I think at the time they were more like $700-800 maybe. They very famously, there was a line that had kind of a rubber bezel, which were a little cheaper.
Yeah.
Very good looking watches. And Dan, was it you that sent me the video of the guy who is the historian? And we talk about like dream jobs, right? Like what a dream job. This guy was hired to come into TAG Heuer, I guess it is. For years I said TAG Heuer because it sounded fancy like Louis Vuitton or Hermes or whatever, right? But it's TAG
It's like
Heuer.
the debate about, is it Ralph Lauren or Ralph Lauren?
Well, it is Ralph Lauren.
Yeah.
JJ
But
Collier.
I used to say Ralph Lauren because obviously it's fancy.
Yeah. Now our buddy who worked for the man himself confirmed that.
That's right.
Very famously on the steering committee. But TAG Heuer, it's to me that sounds harsh like Porsche, but this historian, that's how he pronounced it. He came into this job. There were these archives, but it was in disarray, right? It was basically like this big closet, basically full of stuff. He's organized it. Like, this is my dream job. Like, give me something like this where I can come in, I can make order from a mess, right? I can, hold these holy grail watches, right? And obviously the alliance with motorsport over the years. It was a fascinating 40 minutes or whatever. The guy, you could tell he was like a pig in shit. Like, I mean, he knew he had his dream job, right? I want a job like that, right? And where you can just go in and just make it yours and be excited for it and all that. And it was awesome. And I guess I didn't have an appreciation for the length of the history. They go way back. Obviously, and they did some really cool, funky stuff, didn't they, Dan? Like back in the day with colors, and it was pretty avant-garde,
Yeah. No,
Yeah, and
originally
that's
they
not.
were.
I don't know much about that either. It'd be fascinating
Mm-hmm.
to kind of go through the archives and see, especially if they were doing experimental, kind of pushing the envelope stuff.
Did you guys hear that?
I think
Yeah,
that was TAG offering you a job.
I am
wasn't it?
sorry. Maybe it is a I should pick this.
answer it.
That could be
I
that job that you're expecting. Yeah,
well,
yeah,
here,
it's
let's.
interesting because
I
Heuer.
apologize. I had this on
It used to be
silent.
Heuer, right? So
Yeah.
it used to be Heuer was the timing for motorsport.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
originally, these were devices that you would have in the car, right? So you would, like when you were rallying, you would
Yeah.
use these clocks in the car to measure your times.
Oh,
And
they
then,
made those clocks.
yeah.
right.
And then track times were measured with stopwatches, which were Heuer. And then, the company went through a purchase. They got bought out by TAG Heuer. TAG at the time was a company that was working very closely in Formula One with McLaren. So then they started to produce watches. But you think about the history, there's lots of famous watches like the Steve McQueen watch.
Yeah.
So Steve McQueen had the Monaco, which was the square dial
Hello,
watch.
my name is Jeff, and I'm calling from my site technical.
We can hear that,
I
right?
am sorry. That is my email service. Apparently, that's.
Really?
Oh,
I
wow.
apologize. I'll edit that out. I'm sorry. I didn't think. It
No,
was
it's all
employee.
good.
I thought it was a call from an potential.
Yeah.
I wanted to
Oh,
see. Sorry.
Well, then for a second, I'm like, oh, we're about to have a HIPAA violation. He's like, I'm calling with your test results.
That's not edited.
Do we want to hold up? Right, edit.
Clean as a whistle.
Yeah. If anything,
Who knows?
consistent.
Go have fun.
Margaritaville cruise. Yeah, here we come. Sorry, Dan. I will edit all this out.
Yeah,
That's for the
Or
that's
not.
for the Patreon.
That's
there
right.
we go. And no, Ryan, he won't edit. it
Motorsport
out.
history. Yeah.
Motorsport history. Where were we? So TAG has got a long history with motorsport, and obviously Steve McQueen in the film Le Mans wore a Monaco.
Yeah.
The video that we were referring to, it was interesting because all these watches were in drawers. And, they would reel out one drawer and it would be the 50s and, these classic
So cool.
timepieces. And then he pulls out this drawer and he's got a Steve McQueen race suit, which is like, yeah, does it get any cooler than that?
That he actually wore.
Yeah, from the film.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
I love the way. Yeah, it was basically like he had. It was like this. These toolboxes I have back here that are empty to varying degrees. But that's what it was. He had it was drawers and drawers of these metal, and each one better than the last. Right. I mean, that's the only way to describe it. It was. It was
Talk
awesome.
about the definition of wait for it in real life. It's like, you thought that was good.
Yeah,
Hang on.
Well, it's like a natural return to form. I think is what you're getting at, Dan. I mean, these. It just kind of seems right. It kind of seems right, and
Yeah.
so I'm excited for it. Yeah.
On a different note about watches, this summer there is a groundbreaking movie coming out, which is F1. So this is who's the guy? Brad Pitt.
Brad Pitt.
That
Yeah,
one.
Brad Pitt's that's the one. He's leading these efforts, and it's all around a fictional F1 team called Apex F1. But at Watch and Wonders this week, IWC, who are closely linked with Mercedes,
Yeah.
have released Apex limited edition watches
interesting.
for the race team.
Okay.
So it's
Oh,
gonna take
that's
their
cool.
marketing one step further and actually creating products. So there's already a Twitter account for Apex F1. So I really hope they don't mess the film up. But you can now buy a IWC watch.
So it's only a matter of time though before it becomes an actual F1 team.
Right.
Wow, I don't know. The quickest way to become a millionaire is be a billionaire and buy an F1 team. So maybe they won't be in the short term, but it's going to be an interesting movie this summer. Netflix has done a great deal of good work for Formula One with markets, and maybe this is one step closer. If you look at any of the ways they're creating the film, they're actually taking real car footage, in-car footage from different teams.
Yeah.
So last year, I think it was at Spa, they took the Alpine team's footage, and they're going to superimpose the actual images of the Apex team.
Oh. I
Technology.
knew because obviously Brad Pitt and the team has been spotted at different races and events in the last couple of years.
That's what
and
he's
so I
been up
knew
to.
they were using, some of the real footage, but that's going to be really interesting. And I think for car people, that adds an element of authenticity where you're more engaged because it's real.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Huh, interesting.
But would you buy an IWC watch for a team that doesn't exist?
I would absolutely buy an IWC watch. I don't know, like that. Those could be ones. Those could be like the, the Saudi Rolexes or the Domino's Rolexes, right, of the future, right? Like they may look back like that was a weird thing to do, and now they're worth $1 million.
Yeah.
I've got a buddy Eric here in town who's got one of the is it the Petronas
Yes.
IWC watches. That's sort of a teal on the numerals and things are sort of this teal and the strap, and it's awesome. It's maybe a titanium watch or something. It's a good looking watch. If I wasn't into Rolex and Sheffield, I think IWC is a brand I could do, but I don't know, man. I'd need to find out more about this thing. Apex.
Apex
Yeah.
F1.
Apex. That's a good
I
name.
feel like, I mean, it could be, it's so, like in a way it's so kitschy and, unique. There aren't going to be a ton of them. And it's kind of a fun story. And going in like, yeah, it's a team from the movie. But especially if you connected with the movie or you really love F1 or, you're a huge Brad Pitt fan. Like, I could see it being a fun conversation piece.
Yeah.
Benjamin Button hit hard, I'm just saying.
You're like, I've been looking for some Brad Pitt memorabilia that I could collect, and finally the watch has arrived. Wrong movie, but I'll take it.
It's going back in time.
It would be a
The
crazy
watch keeps looking newer. It's so weird. How do they do it?
Gone from stainless steel to platinum.
So
I
time
love
will
it.
tell with these watches, but it's an interesting concept.
Would
that
you wear it, Dan?
Not the Apex, but I
Okay.
would love the watch you described, the teal one that's part of the Mercedes F1 team.
Yeah, it's not hugely expensive.
collaboration.
Yeah, it's really.
They did another one which was like the to the principle of Mercedes is called Toto Wolff.
Yeah.
And they did a Toto Wolff limited edition, which is
Oh.
am I going to pronounce this right? A tourbillon, is that right?
Tourbillon, I think is.
Tourbillon.
Yeah.
But it's just stupid money.
Unnecessary complication, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
But so not the Apex ones, but I would love a Mercedes IWC.
Yeah.
Yeah, IWC. I got to go to one of their events a couple years ago. They were opening their store in on Rodeo Drive, I think. And I mean, they do some really beautiful watches. So love to see what the Apex looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I think that has a lot to do with it. What does it actually look like?
Yeah.
Right.
That would be
It's a
the
cool logo.
kind of decision maker for me.
Right. Interesting. Our friends at Sheffield, though, keep pumping out cool stuff. So,
I
that's kinda
know.
got my, my attention. But
And I think they've got a Swiss movement watch coming.
yeah,
Yes.
we knew about that when, guys, way back when. So
We
shout
had
out
an
Jay.
inside scoop.
When you get him on, it's been a minute. So
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be
Yeah.
good to catch up with him. I know my daughter has one of the lavender pilot dial ones, and she wears it every single day, and it's very special to her. And she was, we were at a doctor's appointment, and I had my Spike's Car Radio one on. She had hers on, and the doctor must have been a watch guy, because at the end of the appointment, he looked down and he's like, "Wait a minute. Well, that's a cool color. Wait, the dial's tilted. Tell me about this." And then I was pointing at hers and he saw mine and he's like, "Well, that's a cool watch too." So we got to tell him about Sheffield. So that was fun.
who do you think's buying all these Porsche turbos, right?
Very cool.
No, I love
very
it. It's
cool.
that secret code. We've talked about that, like, right? Sheffield watches. It's like if you know, you know. I love it, right?
Yeah.
Secret club.
Are we allowed to talk about Lindsey's new old gig?
Right.
Can we? So I think in the last few episodes we've been talking about these cars that you've managed to kajangle. I'm making
Yes.
words up, but there's a whole story behind that in terms of a role that you can announce now, but you haven't been able to announce for a little while. So
Yeah,
what is
that's
it
true.
And what are you doing?
So I've been doing a variety of things for them, and it's been really interesting. And yeah, the Speedster and then the McLaren, that was part of that. They've been very generous to give me the keys to the cars, but just kind of helping get eyeballs on some of the Vorsteiner stuff that was on the McLaren and get visibility for that. And then the Speedster has just moved on to a new home, so that was I and a few other people had it for a bit to sort of get some more eyeballs on it. And
It's got provenance now. Lindsey Just drove this car. It's worth more now, right?
Yeah. Now it's got provenance. It's official.
Yeah. And for those not familiar with the group, so is Vorstein the umbrella company and Gunther Werks is an element of Vorstein? Is that how it works?
No, I think they're on the same level. Neither one of them owns the other one. Both of them have been started by Peter Nam, who's the CEO of Vorsteiner and of Gunther Werks. He started Vorsteiner first, and they do the carbon fiber, aftermarket trim pieces and wing and, the aero and wheels. And then obviously Gunther Werks does the 911 remastered by Gunther Werks and, delivers dreams you can drive.
There we go. Well, congratulations. It's now official.
Yeah. It's LinkedIn official, right?
LinkedIn official means that, it's...
Counting on many Gunther Werks press cars in the days and weeks to come, right? Aren't we, Dan?
Right. We're going to speak that into existence. But it's been, I love the team there, and it's been a variety of projects. I've done some social media strategy and content for them. And the project I'm working on right now is the turbo media or turbo car media placement, which has been really fun. So I'm really enjoying it.
That turbo is such a fast car, such a quick car.
Yeah, you can't help. Can you scroll through the internet and there's images of it all over the place? So you're clearly doing a great job.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That's very.
And it's such a thing to look at too. It's really got its own vibe, and it's like it does that rare thing of looking futuristic and like with a nod to the past, right? It's that
right. Yeah, they did a good job of
thing going on. Yeah.
Combining.
It's pretty great.
Well, and the color is so striking. It's sort of like gets the fire going, makes you smile. It's like cheerful and also exciting and powerful, and it makes you want to drive it.
Yeah, absolutely. Which I've not yet done, so make it so.
We keep dropping hints. It'll happen, right? As long as we drop the right...
Sorry, I think my headphones dropped out there. It's fine.
And if we transition from Gunther Werks, we can go to Singer.
Yeah,
because
Ryan,
biggest competitor. You were at a bit of a VIP party with Singer in Colorado, weren't you?
Yeah,
tell us about that.
The sun shines on me, and we're such good pals with everyone really at Porsche Colorado Springs. John Deisty and Justin Underwood and that whole crew. Those guys are all just the best. And they had a Singer. I don't know what it was actually called. I didn't bother to look at the invitation. I just went. It was like
you heard Singer and said yes.
Yes, I beckoned and I showed up. And so there was Singer. It was like a launch party type thing. And they are at Porsche of Colorado Springs, or Porsche Colorado Springs are a Singer dealer or whatever you want to call it.
Oh, right.
And so they always have some Singers in stock. I think a lot of Singers come through them to new customers. And so I don't know the name of the commission, and I should have brought out the lithograph that was given at the end of the night. But a new commission, lithograph just sounds fancy, but there's a new commission that they unveiled on the Friday night. And then the following day, they had a more of an open to the public cars and coffee, which Colorado Springs is far enough away where it's not just a hop, skip, and a jump, and it just couldn't quite make it down the next day too. But that was, I know, just hugely attended. People raved about the event on Saturday, but Friday was cool because it was a much smaller group, and this commission that they unveiled was beautiful. It was sort of this pale yellow metallic, almost a pearlescent pale yellow. It was very, very cool with like an olive drab green interior, which you wouldn't think would work, but it worked just amazingly well. Seamus and Ethan from Singer were there.
Oh, nice.
And got to have dinner with those guys, and John Deisty and his family, and Brendan Garst from Shift Colorado Magazine. And it was just a fun night. Those are great guys. It's such a great car. When you see those cars up close and just you see the artistry and just the thoughtfulness and design, as a designer or graphic designer myself, I think you're pretty attuned to those things. And, and this was a turbo. They call it the classic turbo. So there's the DLS, which is sort of the next step, but this is the classic turbo that very much apes the 930, right? The look of the 930. And so, for example, this car has these accordion bumpers, but they're not accordion bumpers. They just sort of, have the form with sort of a, lines scored into where the accordions would be, but instead it's a very clean design, right? It's just, this car is beautiful. I mean, everything about the car. I don't know how they finish these cars to the level that they do, but it was just a great night of all things Singer. And those guys were kind enough. I did a little video on Instagram and LinkedIn, and all reposted it. All the Singer guys reposted the thing. So I appreciated
awesome.
that. And hopefully, maybe we can get one of those for us to drive in time. Wink, wink, nod, nod, nudge, nudge. So,
Right.
but yeah, it's an interesting sort of conversation, right? Because they're similar-ish money, right? A Gunther Werks and a Singer, and Singer I think starts at about $850, but no Singer is actually $850, right? Everyone always upgrades at least to the 4-liter or whatever, and this turbo is obviously much more expensive.
Right.
But,
Once you spec it out, and I think Gunther's in that range starting, and then once you spec them out, they're over $1 million.
You're up there. So Singer reimagines, Gunther Werks
remasters,
and it's kind of like two solutions to the same problem, right? Where you're taking an older car, you're sort of making it. I think Gunther Werks says they make the cars that Porsche would make had they carried on right with the technology, the air-cooled technology, or something to that effect. And I think the philosophy at Singer is probably very similar, but yet they're very different products, right?
Yeah. And more, and
like,
maybe you felt this, Ryan, like now getting the time with them and getting to see the cars up close. And as I've, worked with Gunther Werks and gotten to know them and learned more about Singer too, because I think on the surface you go, oh, they're competitors, and people in the space, compare them, which is a natural reaction. But they do very different things, actually. I think the approach is very similar in that it's high quality. There's a lot of thought that goes into it. No detail goes untouched or is overlooked, and everything's very deliberate. But the finished products are actually quite different, which even I didn't understand fully until recently.
And I know of people who have both, right? So I think that's saying something, right? They each have their own, reasons to buy, right? So Dan, sorry, you were.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was you telling me this, Ryan, or whether I heard it somewhere else. But the guys at Singer were saying that their favorite customers are the guys who can just about afford a Singer. So not these people that have got multiple cars and multiple collections, because they're easier to work with, they care more about it, and they're more decisive. Was it you, Ryan, that was telling me that?
It wasn't me, but that gives me a little hope for the future.
Right.
Was it? So I think it was Matt Farah, because I think I just heard that this morning.
Yeah.
And he was talking, because he was there, I think the Friday before Johnny's Cars and Coffee at Helms. Matt was there, and he met with Maz, and Maz was he was sharing what Maz had said about, like, kind of their favorite and the easiest customers to work with are the ones who it's a stretch to get a car, to get a Singer.
Yeah.
Quite regularly I get Ryan and Matt Farah mixed up, so just another occasion.
I mean, they've got the beard, like they're both podcasters, among other things. It's understandable.
Check our bank accounts. You could tell us apart very, very quickly. That's...
I mean, details.
I got my own little West Side Collector car store.
There we go.
That's what it was. It was the lift behind you.
That's right. No, both cars I just really, really like. I like the philosophy. The people all seem great on, with both. And I just, definitely would be, one or both would be on my shopping list. I'm just waiting for one of these companies to do like a 986 Boxster, right? Maybe that's, maybe that's
only a matter of time, isn't it?
A little closer to right. So,
I saw a reimagined Volvo last weekend.
Okay, really?
It was reworked, reimagined. So there's a regular Cars and Coffee that happens on a Sunday morning. It's mainly air-cooled Porsches.
Yeah.
It's quite niche. Like, I remember one time posting about it on the PCA group and got told off, like, don't share this, everyone will turn up type thing.
Really?
But it's a good group of people that...
God damn it, Dan.
Yeah.
This is why we can't have nice things.
Right. But anyway, we were at this meet up. My friend Matt had just got a new old 993. So we're talking at this car and looking at his car, and this Volvo pulls in, and it's making a heck of a noise. And this is like an old 80s two-door, like coupe Volvo thing, not like the ones, not the P ones, but more of a square boxy Volvo.
The chopped one?
It was the one that was like, it's symmetrical almost, front and back, and then it's got the cab kind of in the middle.
Yeah, but very much a box.
Yeah.
So anyway, this guy pulls in, and he's got Swedish stickers on the window, and it's making this great noise, a little wing on the back. And he opens up the bonnet, and the last thing that you expect to see in a Volvo is a V8 BMW engine. So
that's true.
Clearly, they stripped it out, gone to town with this engine, and it just looked and sounded really cool.
Oh, you gotta love
that's
it.
That's wild.
Right? Yeah.
So what was the story? Like, how did it come to be this, Franken Volvo?
I think someone had more time on their hands and more money on their hands than than they thought they had, and just worked on it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you mentioned the 1800, and we have a friend again. Bring up John Deisty's name. A car which I think would be a perfect candidate for a BMW V8. So
Oh, that's
John,
right.
if
He
you're
has
listening,
that. Yeah.
He's got an
Isn't there that
1800.
company, is it Cyan, who make them electric?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I haven't heard that
They
company
seem to have
name.
gone quiet, haven't they? It was a few years ago.
Yeah.
But maybe we can convince John to turn it into a Cyan.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
For the sake of both of our podcasts, so we can all
Yes.
talk about it.
I can't afford my own project card, John. So this one's on you. So was it SCION, like the former Toyota sub brand, or is this?
I think it was
spelled-
with a P.
Okay. Oh, that's right. That's right. I found a Scion, like SCION metal keychain in a drawer that was given away at an old Chicago auto show. Probably like when Scion was like announced or something, right? Like, metal. Wouldn't be metal today. It'd be plastic or something. It'd be virtual. You get a QR code. That's what
There
you
we
get
go.
at the automotive show. But
Scan
Less
this, then go
creepy.
over there, then fill out a form. Yeah.
that's right.
Sign your life away, and then you can be a
Back in the good old
passenger.
days when swag was free.
That's right. And made them ferrous materials. Yes.
Yeah.
Although I've still got my bottle opener from the LA Auto Show last year. That
Oh,
was
yeah.
that was a good
time.
bit of swag. Good to have a
Yeah,
bottle opener on your
yeah.
keyring, isn't it?
Yeah, that was a fun one.
Who was that one from?
From the organisers.
That's right. I don't
And I
think
don't
I
know
got
who it was.
one.
No, I don't think I did
Yours.
either.
I think maybe just press, as in they were in the press room, and there
Right,
was
where they
a
were
notepad.
out to be picked up.
Yeah.
I think I
Yeah.
took a journal
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
I was
took
trying not
cookies.
to,
That's where I was headed.
trying not to just grab everything, as the psychology of
Yeah.
swag is like,
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. Well, think
Yeah.
about the psychology. You took a bottle opener, you took a journal, and I took cookies. What does that say about us?
Well, I took cookies too,
They were great cookies.
and they were good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's what is it, a Rorschach's test, or Freud would have a field day with, show me your swag and I'll tell you all about yourself.
Yep.
And Lindsay, you went to the Advance Appreciation Day, was that right?
I did. It was really fun. It was at Park Place, which is a classic car dealer. They also have Lotus and I think Aston Martin up here in Seattle on the east side. And they have a detail shop that does really amazing work that I have patronized in the past. And yeah, it was fun. It was there were enough cars that they had filled up and, were into overflow parking. And my daughter was with me, so we went and checked it out. Adam and Chrissy were there, so it was great to see them. And we met a new friend, James, and his rescue pit bull, who he said, and she was adorable and very sweet. And my daughter is always excited to meet a new dog. And this poor dog had been abandoned as a puppy in a porta potty. And the man who has adopted her is a car enthusiast. So he said, because she was in a porta potty and I like cars, I have ended up naming her Porsche as sort of a nod to where she's from, but also where she is now.
Love it.
I don't know why my head was going towards Honey Bucket, but
That would be very sweet also.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a really interesting group of cars, and it was fun for my daughter and I because we pulled in and there was an E36 M3 almost exactly like one that we used to have. And then as we started looking around, we're like, and there's a red Porsche like what we used to have, and there's a truck. And so then it was kind of for her spotting like, oh, we had one of those too, and we had one of those too, or then she was noticing, okay, this isn't the exact same kind of car, but there's another BMW, or there's another, Porsche or whatever, or trying to think. There were just a lot, and then there was a beautiful green Alpha Giulia, the Quadrifoglio, that like kind of jewel
Oh, I
box
love that
green.
That's such
Yeah.
a great looking car.
So it was a really fun, like very nice crowd, very accessible size. Like we were able to cover the overflow and the main lot and visit with people. Didn't feel like we missed anything. And they had their, I think they must do like maybe minor cosmetic, assistance in addition to the detailing, because they had some cars up on lifts, and they had one of the most interesting sort of tableaus was they had a G-Wagon suspended above and it wasn't a Morgan, but it was like Morgan size or smaller. And I'm like, tell me you have confidence in your lifts without telling me.
Right. It's pouncing on the poor thing.
Yeah.
That's
So it was fun. It was really fun. It was a very nice,
cool.
like, it was a great way to kick off the weekend. And my daughter had fun. Then when we were leaving, she's like, okay, I'm going to tally up all the cars that we saw that we've had. So that was fun because we got to talk about, like, we've been very lucky to experience, like, to be able to walk around. And, there was a Mustang that was like our Boss 302 that we used to have. And then there was like a GT500 that was like our GT350 that we used to have. So it was good to say to her, like, hey, you've gotten to experience a lot already, too.
Right. You mentioned an E36 M3. There's one for sale here locally. And, like, they're not crazy expensive.
No.
Like I could almost make a case for like one as a third car. It's a little more daily drivable or whatever. But I feel like all the stories I've heard about this thing, it's like you're kind of buying into like some work, right? With the subframe and some of the other issues. Is that all BS, or is that a car? I
think that's true. I think it depends on the example.
'Cause you've owned a couple. Right?
Yeah, my track car my track car is a sedan. It's a 98 sedan M3.
I think that was the better
And the other one was a 95 coupe.
Okay.
That was Avis Blau, which is a beautiful blue that I still love. And so is the one that's for sale by you, is it a sedan or a coupe?
It's a coupe. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But
I mean, I do love them in red. Is it a manual?
It must be. I'm just imagining.
I'd assume.
Yeah.
Sometimes you run across automatics, but I mean, that could be a fun, you have a daughter that's going to be driving before you know it.
True. It's the E46 that has the bigger subframe issue, right?
At the back. So the E46 has an issue at the back where underneath the boot, they can fall apart.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay. Maybe,
so I don't know if that's what you're referring to.
Yeah.
That's like the first thing to check if you're going to look at an E46.
Yeah. I like just that era of BMW,
Yeah.
So I've never actually owned one. So the newest BMW.
Well, I mean, I really like them, obviously. I mean, I turned mine into my track car, which I have loved. And there was one in LA. It was almost exactly the same as what mine had been stock. And I seriously considered, because mine, my track car, I need to get it running again. And I was looking at this one that was for sale because it still has the back seat, so my daughter could ride with me.
Nice.
And I haven't driven mine in a bit, so I went and drove this one in LA just to kind of see, like, am I remembering it correctly?
Yeah.
And Paul Kramer at Auto Kennel, he calls when you look at a new car or when you get a new car, you start nesting, where you start going like, okay, I'm going to update this and I'm going to update this and I'm going to change this and I can do this.
Yeah.
And I caught myself nesting on the test drive.
Oh.
And I went, okay, so I still enjoy driving them. I do still like them.
It's like leaving your toothbrush over at your date's house, right? I mean, that's what's going on there, right? Like you want to, or going to the pound, right? And shopping puppies, right? Like it's just,
right.
It's
like don't go
dangerous.
unless you're prepared to adopt.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough. I've always liked those. I've always like that. To me is, just being, a person in his late 40s. Can't say that for much longer, right? Like those were the cars that, were cool when I was younger and
I mean, when we were
like
around the time of learning to drive, like those were the M3s, and then obviously the E46 came out. There was an E46 at the Park Place at the Avance Gathering too, and had one of those, so that was kind of fun too, because I was pointing out cars to her, like, oh, I had that before you were born, or I had, that was another one. So, but I like the E36, and if you can find one that's been well taken care of, I think it's a good. I think the prices are still pretty accessible.
Yeah.
And and they're nice. They're fun to drive.
Yeah, 240 horsepower in the States, right?
You guys were poor cousins though, because I think in the UK and Europe they had a M3 Evo, which somehow the engine was related to the McLaren F1 engine. It was like half of the McLaren F1 engine.
Kidding.
And I don't think it ever came to your shores, so maybe it'll get imported soon or now.
I think some of them have been imported. Were those the or the green ones were the Heritage? Did they have a cosmetic, indicator kind of?
The wheels, the alloy wheels were a specific alloy wheel. and I think they did them in specific colors. I think you folks got in kind of recompense for that, and I say that right. You got a
good word.
lightweight, which
That's
I think
right,
was
we did.
available in white.
Yep, only white. The graphics.
Right.
With the graphics.
Yeah.
And
That
then
was the
maybe
one Paul
the
Walker had
Heritage.
several
Yes.
of those.
Yeah. But you didn't get the full-blown, whatever the horsepower was. But it was that was something to really lust after.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I remember
Yeah.
seeing a few of those and just,
I
was
think
too young.
those have been imported since then. I know I've heard. I don't know if I've seen one, but I know people have talked about it, or they've seen them up for sale. Not necessarily, local where we could go see it, but we didn't have it at the time. You're right.
Yeah, it's. It seems like in Seattle specifically, we're kind of coming out of car hibernation now.
Yeah.
There's a few events that kind of continue on all the way through the winter, but so in theory, this weekend is the first Exotics, which is. At
Oh,
Redmond
I didn't know
Town
that.
If it gets tomorrow, I think they'll announce whether it's going to be on or not. Because if there's rain, it won't be on.
Right.
But if not, expect a whole load of polished metal at whatever it is, 6:37 a.m. queuing
Nice.
to get in for that event,
Guess
which
that's
will be
too
cool.
early. That's too early.
Well, the nice thing about Exotics is that it goes on for like it starts early, but you can get there later
Yeah.
and still see, people are still there. I mean, it's a massive event at this point.
We have this Pearl Street little get together, which I love here, which I've probably blown up its spot. But that's like 8:30, 9 o'clock. That's it's enough time for an old
But
man
that's a
like me.
Saturday. That's a Sunday
It's
versus
a Sunday,
Saturday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's our
And
church, right?
The
It's,
thing that
Yeah.
you need to consider with Exotics is it might be 6:37, but it's been 6 months in waiting.
that's true.
So these guys are like
People are
desperate
itchy.
to get their cars
Yeah,
out. And,
yeah.
yours is more of a godly time than.
True.
Right.
Meanwhile, it's snowing here in Denver today, so go figure.
Is it
wow.
really? Well, and it's supposed to be beautiful on Saturday, Dan, actually. So I would
Is
say
it?
chances are good Exotics will happen, but that's wild, Ryan.
Yeah.
And if it's snowing, does the Pearl Street meetup happen still?
Yeah,
And
people
What are the
just-
coolest cars that come, even though the snow's there?
Yeah, this probably won't accumulate, but no, when it is 10 below zero or there's snow on the ground, it's mostly daily drivers, if not all daily drivers. So a lot of
The
older
people show up.
Cayennes. The people show up. The donuts are still there, right? The coffee's still there, right? So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Any
it's-
brave fellows though, or ladies?
that will bring
does
their
McGinnis
Porsches?
turn up with something nice, even though it's -10.
Yeah, there are, like the 993 and 964 guys don't seem to be nearly as bothered about the car melting, if a snowflake hits
Yeah.
it. So, it's, I will say though, there is something to the salt thing. And, we
Yeah.
do get salt here, probably not like the Midwest or whatever, but there is salt here in that we talked about this on an earlier show, but seeing my old car on Cars and Bids, my old 718 Cayman, and how,
Yeah.
that car, I would never drive it in the salt, the snow, whatever. And it's now lived in the Midwest for a couple of years, and how
Right.
there's corrosion on the underbody, on the beautiful Fab Speed exhaust I had put on that car and other things. So, that's the thing that bothers me more than, also I don't mind sliding around, whatever. I just don't want salt's just no good. So
keep an eye on that car.
Yeah.
Wait 2 years, buy it back, and then give it to Singer or Gunther Werks or whoever,
right.
and they'll remaster Imagination it.
well, eventually they're going to have to start remastering some other stuff.
Right.
Right.
So
So there we go. We've got
probably not
we've got
718
Ryan-
Caymans, but that's.
Ryan's willing to be a donor if you're listening, Singer, and
Right.
an experiment with you.
Can I add one more thing about 718 Caymans? This
Yeah.
is a question that's come up during a couple of conversations here locally with me later, where people are sort of stuck between two cars. One is a 718 Cayman GT4, or maybe even a 4.0 GTS. I know it's different, completely different suspension, all that kind of stuff, but or a Carrera T, a 991.2 Carrera T. So for similar-ish money, a Carrera T or a 718 GT4 or a 981 GT4 for that matter. And my case has been always GT4. There's just, something special about a GT car, even a GT4. But I've also heard a very good case for the Carrera T. The Carrera T famously was offered with buckets and PCCBs. I don't think those are offered on the newest T, right? The 992.2. It had a 7-speed transmission, not the 6-speed that the new one has. It was I think a 360 or 370 horsepower turbo 3-liter. So it was not an NA car, but people who have these cars seem to love them. I don't know. I think I'd always have to go GT4 as much as I love the shape of the 911, as much as I do love the T. I think that currently the GT4 is probably more undervalued than the T. And this all came up because there was a very good example of a really nice car on Bring a Trailer recently, which went only for 103,000, and I think it only had 5,000 miles on it. It had the buckets, it had PCCBs. You know how in the back it says Carrera T? The current owner, seemed to be an older gentleman, felt it necessary to go to his local Porsche shop and have a 911 badge added to the left of that. So I think that may have kept the price down because visually it was not quite symmetrical. But it was a really, really nice example. It had those like Fuchs style, like the wide spoke wheels, which most of them didn't. It was in white, which they all seem to be in white. I know they weren't. All those so I don't know if you have any thoughts, if you've ever experienced. I've driven both. I mean, I put my money where I guess my mouth is. I like the GT4 better, but a lot of people really like these Ts. Any thoughts? I mean, because they're within spitting distance of each other, right? As far as what they're trading for.
I haven't driven. I mean, I drove a Cayman S like first gen, but I haven't driven the ones that you're speaking about. Dan, do you have experience with those?
I've driven the GT4s. Did this Carrera T have back seats?
I don't think it did because it had the
an
bucket.
option. You could like option it out. Or,
I don't know that it came with it if you got the buckets. I think it may have automatically been deleted. But I could be wrong about that. Yeah. I mean, it had all the stuff, right? I mean, it's a nice example, despite the added badges.
I think for me, it's all about the engine then. And, you're going naturally aspirated versus turbo. So maybe if you're having it in Colorado, maybe the T is the better option because you've got turbos forcing fuel through the engine, right?
Yeah.
Versus, but I mean, what great choices to have.
Yeah, they really,
We should all be so lucky.
Yeah.
Right.
Our friends at First Dibs on their podcast, this question came up at one point, and they made a good case for both, right? Because they don't know for sure, but there may actually be fewer of the Ts that were sold, at least in the States. So
that helps
paper,
in that
right,
sense.
It's slightly rarer, right?
Yeah.
And also they did the T in PDK as well. So if they made fewer Ts and it's a manual.
Yeah. Good point. Good point.
I thought you were going to go somewhere different actually, because looking at 718 Caymans Boxsters, these cars are now 80 to 130,000.
Oh, just base cars. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Base up.
Yeah.
And for that sort of money, I was talking to a friend of mine who's got an M4 convertible. So it looked at the Boxster and just felt like the M4 convertible was more value for money.
Yeah.
But then I said to him, like, so if you had your choice and you could have either, and he said, actually, if I had my choice, I need the two back seats. If I didn't need the two back seats, I would get a Jaguar.
Oh, interesting.
Which really surprised me. And I
Yeah.
said, like, wouldn't you be worried it would fall apart? And he was like, no, I'd get a Jaguar with a, some sort of certified warranty.
Yeah.
He said the engines on those things are phenomenal.
Yeah.
So I think there's some investigative work to be done there.
And they sound great too. I would argue that the M4, you said M4 convertible, is a very different kind of car than a Boxster. I think a Boxster is a pure sports car, or Cayman, and I think the M4 is more of a GT, just a much bigger car. But I see the appeal, absolutely. And if I think, it'd probably be a car that I would drive more, right? It's just a little more dailyable. But Everyday Driver very famously put the base Cayman up against the new Corvette C8 when it came out. Right. And they chose the base Porsche with the 300 horsepower over the 485 horsepower, whatever Corvette, for every reason except for, pure, straight line acceleration, but to your point, and I don't even know if you can put it in order. I think the 17 is officially dead, as of maybe the last few weeks. But I don't really see the case for, a lesser spec Cayman or Boxster when you can get, into a Spider or a GT4 for not a ton more. When I bought my base 718 Cayman back in 17, I paid, and I was reminded of this when I saw the car on Cars and Bids, it was like $59,900. And that car had only a handful of options, including the Sport Plus seats. It had, I don't know, there wasn't much else, it maybe had 5,000 in options, right? Like I'm wont to do. And so that's a $60,000 car, and you could have gotten one for $55,000, right? And now a no option car, I think, is over 80. And why would you possibly get one of those when you could get a Spider for 110, right, in the used market? I just doesn't compute, right? It just doesn't compute. It made a compelling case when it was 60,000. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's half the price, but now it's not so far off. And I don't know. It's a lot of money. And who knows what'll happen now with tariffs and everything else. That may be a 6-figure car now.
The other problem you've got with Porsche is they don't depreciate, do they, to the same way?
Well, no. In fact, they go up in price. If you're in the case of
depending on which one you get. Yeah.
Again, a nice problem to have.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I know, like the Cayman S was, I want to say it was about 75,000 in 2006. So it's interesting. I haven't thought about that in a long time, but
Porsche are pretty good about keeping cars about the same price, right? Like if you go back in time, I mean, I think there's some variation. I remember going when the Miata, the NA Miata was still out. I remember going to a new car dealership and seeing one. It had a hardtop. It was red. It had an automatic, but it had every option. It was like $34,000. And I just thought that was huge money at the time, right? But I think you scrape away those sort of outliers. And I think Porsche does a pretty good job of keeping things. So maybe they were due for an uptick. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it just makes me realize my, $106,000 GT4 was a deal when I got it in 2020. But anyway. But I would say the GRs like that, I would say, there are a lot of cars if you buy right, it's a hell of a lot of car for the money. Sorry, Lindsay.
No, I was just thinking like when I was in high school and college, kind of the adage was like a 3 Series BMW was in the 30s, a 5 Series BMW was in the 50s, and a 7 Series was in the 70s. And we know that's, not even remotely true anymore.
No, I remember the 318. So not the 8045 318, but there was another one like the 8889, right? An E30, the facelifted E30. And I remember there was a dealership in Indianapolis where we lived at the time called Dreyer and Reinbold. They very famously ran an Indy team later, may still. But I remember there being a lease ad. It was 318 for a 318, right? 318 a month for a 318. And then my dad explained, well, because I would have been 12 or 14 at the time or whatever, explained, how leases work and you don't actually own the car at the end of the day. And, ironically, we're spending $100 less a month in 2025 for a car. But, it's just, I don't know. All that math has gone, much like the, I guess, the engine size designations in the model name or whatever, right? But,
Well, and when you look at, Porsche and BMW, it used to be sort of very easy to keep track of the models. And now it's like smaller, tinier and tinier slices of the same size pie. And now there's like the 2 Series and the 4 Series and there's a lot to keep track of these days.
You guys know, is it Forza Motor Cars on Instagram? I think we're probably all connected to him. He posted something, bring this back to Rolex. Rolex announced a new watch. It's called the Land Dweller, right? So it looks just like, if you know your Rolex watches, to me, in my eyes, looks just like the oyster quartz of the 70s when the quartz watch thing was really taken off. And, all these makers of automatic watches got scared because now you can get a movement that keeps better time for pennies on the dollar and all this. And even Rolex encased a quartz movement in a Rolex watch, but it had sort of a different look to it. Anyway, this Land Dweller, talk about archives and tapping into your history. They did just that. But what a terrible name Land Dweller is, because there's the Sea Dweller, right? That's got a romance to it. There's, the Sky Dweller, right? There's the Land Dweller. That's just like you're just kind of hanging out.
Well, and it's like, what was the skit where they're like, the shark is knocking on people's doors? It makes me immediately think of like, you're that nasty land shark again, aren't you?
Stop.
Like the Land Dweller, the official
Aren't we all
watch of the land shark.
That's just kind of like, I guess it's kind of like the Suburban or something, and I guess that's done Chevy okay. But anyway, so the naming has just kind of gotten all wacky. And, sometimes you just wonder if they're not just messing with you. But anyway. One
thing, and I don't, it's like if you're going to complain, you should offer a solution. And I don't know what the best solution is, but and I think it's just an indicator of like the naming convention that was developed before SUVs or before this particular model, and then they tried to keep it in line, is the Audi SQ5.
I know someone that's got
Careful
one of
now.
those.
Careful, Lindsay.
No, I love the cars, and yours is beautiful. I remember riding in yours at Dirtfish, and I was like, "This is delightful." It just feels like a mouthful. Like it doesn't.
Yeah, well, because it is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I don't know what, like I've looked at it and I'm like, okay, if you're going to complain, like how would you do it differently? Because I know they're trying to keep with the naming convention with the S designations and the RS and all that. And I don't know. I mean, the problem is because they already have an S5, they can't just do what they did, and it's kind of
Right.
like before they did SUVs and now they're like, shoot, we got to fit this in.
And they can't
So-
copy BMW with X, right?
Yeah,
That's,
yeah.
Yeah.
They can't just call it Fancy Tiguan. So, joking.
No. Yeah.
That's
'Cause
my
that's so much
segue
longer.
into Volkswagen talk, though. That's-
Well, before we do that, I just asked our research department, who are really busy in the background, define the word dweller. They came back with a person or animal that lives in a specific place.
yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
So this
Yeah.
is, but yeah, I think Ryan, you're right. It sort of gives an image of somebody who's not really getting out and about to me.
Yeah,
Like
it's-
a land dweller.
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
I'm fine in my house.
Well, that's so like you got the Rolex Explorer. That's for spelunkers or spelunkers or however you pronounce it, right? Right. You've got
people that
the
are out and about.
Diver's watch, right? In the Sea Dweller and the Submariner, and you've got the Pilot's watch and the GMT and all that. And I just kind of feel like this is for you Americans, right? Like this is like,
Or it's for
gonna
the
come with an
homebodies
extra
among
link for
us.
your fat wrist.
Go dwell somebody, and somewhere, and
Anyway,
Yeah.
it's
it's
Well, it
crazy.
tells you like these instant associations that we make when we hear things and like how fraught it can be naming a new product because you've
Yeah.
got like if it doesn't land right,
No
could be
pun
the best thing
intended.
ever.
yeah.
So look out for the jungle dweller and the cave dweller.
Yeah,
coming
yeah,
soon
yeah.
from Rolex.
The living room couch sitter.
Right. I think it's because I keep thinking I keep hearing landlubber in my head, and that's not a positive association.
No.
Well, better
We'll
luck
see.
next time.
Yeah.
Well, it clearly worked for Roger Federer, was it? Who was seen wearing it a couple of days before it launched.
Oh, I bet he was. I'm sure that's the one he chose from the drawer that day.
Right.
Yeah, that's, Yeah. Anyway.
But,
I mean, I'll wear one too. It's just would be what I would
He's gonna be just fine.
choose. But it
Yeah.
makes me wonder, sorry, the last thing I'll add, if you know, like these oyster quartz Rolexes, no one wanted them for years, right? And they've kind of had their moments, retro and all that, but it makes me wonder if it will bring those up from the sort of the cellar of values, right? Because you're able to get one of those probably, presumably for less, and it looks basically the same. And I would say oyster quartz is maybe even a cooler name than land dweller. So anyway.
Or will maybe the IWC Apex and the landlubber
They can fight it
will
out.
Do a
be collector's
collaboration.
items before
Yeah.
long, and everybody will be clamoring for them. It'll be interesting to look back. You never know.
Let's talk to Jay. Let's get Jay on here from Sheffield Watches, and let's give him some input on what makes a good watch name. I bet we could come up with some
Well, and
real
get his
zingers.
thoughts.
Yeah, because Jay wouldn't call something a land dweller. That much I know. So
Yeah.
anyway,
And I do love IWC. I think that'll be a cool watch to keep an eye on because I could see that being a real collector's item.
yeah, Apex Dweller. Now there's a name.
I mean, that
Well-
sounds like somebody I want to hang out with. They're out doing stuff.
I was going to say, is the Brad Pitt dweller a
The left
female?
left lane dweller.
There we go. That's definitely
Anyway, I should probably move on from this.
worn by Prius owners all over the world. Let's talk about VW quickly.
Yeah.
So, one of the things I was thinking about was back growing up, VW was one of these car brands where I guess firstly, it was a family bought car brand. So people bought VWs for their family. People learned to drive in Golfs, and the family car could be a Passat or a Passat Estate. I don't know if you had that over here.
Sure, we did. Yeah, at least for one.
I can remember being like 19, being given the keys to a Golf GTI for the weekend and
Ooh.
driving it down to Bournemouth. This was like the 16 valve Mark
Yeah.
III.
Yeah, I can picture.
and
Was it
just-
teal?
It was green.
Oh,
it was
okay.
green, but I think it was a darker green.
Was it darker? Yeah, maybe that's what.
They
it
did have that signature teal that
Yeah,
a lot
yeah,
of them were
yeah.
in.
Yeah. And the car was aspirational. Like having that car for the weekend was like, I want a Golf GTI.
Yeah, it was premium. It felt premium.
Right.
Yeah.
But over time, it seems like that brand has kind of disappeared. Like, that they had a resurgence with the Beetle for certain demographics.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is unique to the UK or not, but like no longer do people like either aspire or buy VW because of the brand. And is that the same in the US?
Well, Dan, you live here too, but
Now,
I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, I think it's very similar. We grew up, we were a Volkswagen family. I think I was brought home from the hospital in a Beetle. I remember having a diesel Rabbit, a diesel Dasher, which was, I think, even back then, sort of a twin to an Audi Fox, right? If that means anything to you. They were twinning back then, 48 horsepower, I think it was. But there was something premium about them. If you couldn't swing, because no one really had BMWs, right? There were Mercedes, at least where I was from, there would be old guys with some money that would have a Mercedes or something, right? Audis, no one quite sure what to make of Audis, right? Especially after like the 60 Minutes piece or whatever. But Volkswagen was I don't know, it was more aspirational premium than like a Chevy or a Ford or whatever. And you were trying a little harder, or it was, it was, I think, it was European, right? If you were trying to make a statement, right? And I think it was like that for years, right? There was a funkiness to it too, right? It was a little counterculture, right? The connections with, hippie culture and all that.
Yeah, with the Beetle and the new Beetle, especially.
Yeah. And I think it
well,
was
and the
always,
van, the VW van, that was peak hippie culture.
Absolutely. And I think, that DNA kind of was, lived on or baked in, but until very recently. And Dan, I had this thought too, when we were shopping for a new car, we had a Tiguan, we went to the dealership, there was nothing in it that interested me. The salespeople didn't really seem passionate. There didn't really seem to be a tangible sort of like, flavor, right? You made a comment, to me earlier about how many SUVs they have, but you can't name them all, right? I think they all start with T, right? Except for, do they all start with T? I don't know. Not the Atlas, right? But, I feel like they've lost their way a little bit. Up until a few years ago, a Jetta felt like a premium product, right? I always liked when I'd rent a car and I'd get a Jetta, right? Because it kind of felt like an Audi Light, right? It felt like it had a lot of the same goodness, even if it had cloth seats and less power or whatever. And I don't know. It doesn't feel that way to me anymore. I don't know where they're going to go from here, where they're going to position themselves. They seem lost. But you know what? Audi seems a little lost to me at the moment too. So
yeah.
Well, do you think even with the new the Buzz, like, do you think that's going to help guide?
Too expensive.
Yeah,
it's too expensive.
But do you have a similar thought process, Lindsey, in terms of when you grew up? Were VW present or?
So they were. It's a good question because in elementary school there was one friend's parents who had a van,
This was
like
Southern
from that
California,
era,
right?
and then another friend's parents had one from the 60s. And then really it was like vintage Beetles, like it wasn't a prominent brand. And then, in high school, there were a fair number of people that had Jettas or Passats because it was an affordable option for, new drivers. But it wasn't like, as far as in the automotive landscape, it didn't really catch my attention. Yeah, it was sort of like, it was there, but it was like a bit player. And, I think really until they introduced the new Beetle, that was kind of the first like momentous thing associated with that brand in my lifespan so far.
Yeah. And the Golf GTI wasn't on the radar for you?
It wasn't for me. Some of my guy friends who were enthusiasts, they were very enthusiastic about them when we were in college. And even, probably in the last 10 years, that attracted some attention and consideration, but hasn't really had sort of the market share of attention that like BMW or Porsche has garnered.
I mean, I remember aspiring to a GTI. Thought they were cool. They could get leather and, they were zippy and it just, I don't know. It's just, the dealerships themselves are always a little different, right? They're always a little more Euro feeling or whatever. Somewhere along the line, they decided they were going to be sort of everything to everyone. And that's sort of the fatal flaw a lot of car companies have made, I think, over the years, right? Never sold a pickup truck in the U.S., though, despite that, which is interesting. Was it the Anorak or whatever that they've sold in other markets? And you know, it's just, God, I remember in high school, my sister wanted a Volkswagen. She couldn't quite swing a Jetta, so she got was it a Fox? Did Volkswagen make a Fox?
Yeah.
And it was a made in Brazil car, so I'll never forget. You know, it had like 40 pounds of undercoating because it was like made to go on jungle roads or whatever. And it was just this anemic 4-speed type thing, you know. Yeah, I don't know. To bring this back, I don't know what box it checks for me, right? Because now they're at the price where if I can afford a new Volkswagen Atlas, I can probably go get a Q5, right?
Or even an SQ5.
I don't know about that. That's aspirational, but
right.
I'd actually love to own an SQ5, like to daily drive that. That would check off a lot of boxes.
Yeah. But it was interesting when I went to get my GR Corolla. I didn't even bother test driving the Golf R.
Yeah.
And I test drove the Civic Type R. But like, there was nothing that appealed to me, and I know that there's some journalists out there that have bought Golf Rs as their dailies, but just wasn't of interest. It was
too stick.
Well, I think when I got mine, you could still get stick. They're retired stick now.
Okay.
But it just was too bland, and I'm sure it drives better. I'm sure it handles better, but you know, in terms of a weekend car, but I just didn't. There was no interest. No interest whatsoever, which was a real shame.
Yeah. I remember really lusting after that first R they sold in the States, which they had the VR6, and it was a manual, and it had, it was just such a cool, I think it was all-wheel drive. It was like 300 horsepower, or maybe that was the second gen, but that was something special, right? That was something neat. And I don't know. It's just, they've just sort of become, what has Volkswagen become to me in the States? It's sort of become it's just kind of like a fourth domestic brand or something, where it's really been so diluted and doesn't seem particularly German anymore. Most of them are built in Mexico, I think, that are sold in the States, right? It's one of the reasons, and there's a difference, right? I mean, even if it's just psychological, I don't know. Volkswagen.
There's upside and opportunity. It's interesting with the new Buzz, which is the van, right? It's the first time I can remember in a long time seeing commercials.
Yeah. Well, and they did, was it the Super Bowl? They did that riff on the Californians skit.
Yeah.
Which was so good.
But yeah, it's been a while. Maybe they just didn't have the money to market, but it's been a while. So anyway, hopefully, you imagine if they brought out a new Golf GTI that was lightweight and manual and, you know, it's...
I love the idea. I just can't see it happening, but who knows? I think the whole industry is just kind of lost right now. Should we be focusing back on AC cars? Like, what about the tariffs? Like, what? I mean, I can't imagine being like a product planner at Volkswagen or anywhere at the moment, because who the hell knows anymore? I feel we're almost, you know, kind of like post SUV. Like, I don't know. It's strange days. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very watch this space.
Yeah. I don't want to leave the podcast on a down note. So before we finish, are there any types of car or drivers that you give extra attention to, or you know, maybe give that extra length in, you know, ahead of you? And I've got some thoughts on this, but like, Ryan, I know you suggested this subject. So, you know, who do you avoid at all costs?
I have experienced recently Toyota Highlander drivers who are more interested in their phone in front of them than driving. And oftentimes at stoplights, they're either in front of me and I have to tap the horn, or they're behind me, slowly inching closer to my back bumper kind of thing. I don't know what it is about a Highlander. I'm sure they're fine vehicles, not on my radar. I know they exist, right? But those people seem to be tuned out. I'm also very afraid of Ram truck drivers because you can be in a GT2 RS and they think that they should be getting by you. So the folks scare me for other reasons. Those people are a little too involved. So
that's a serious piece of machinery.
It is.
Especially if you're in something small.
Yeah, great truck. They ride incredibly well. But yeah, that's a lot of plastic chrome coming your way,
Yeah. Well, what's interesting, and it's related to like being around truck drivers, and what caught me by surprise after I had that Subaru Forester, when I went back to my truck, I was physically aware of how heavy the truck is, where that's what I drive every day, so I'm used to it.
Yeah.
But having been in the Subaru for a week, it made me realize like just how heavy it is and how much it's you're piloting it as much as driving it because of the size.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was interesting. But yeah, that's you got to be aware of the bigger vehicles.
We see a lot of the Highlanders being used as Ubers in Seattle.
Okay.
So I wonder if that's the same in Denver, and these folks are actually, picking up the next ride. Or...
Every Uber I seem to get in is a Prius C that smells like body odor, but that's
that's the common. I know. I feel like that's been on a lot of the LA-based podcasts lately. There has been a mention of Prius Uber scent experiences,
and it's never
lately.
the full size Prius. It's an old Prius, or it's the C, and it's got like I don't know, the seat's wet, or I mean, it's got the black ice little tree, on the. It's just, that's an episode. Do you remember when Lyft and Uber were a premium product?
Yeah, somebody was talking about this on a podcast. I want to say it was maybe Matt Ferris' show last week, but they were talking about like the commoditization and how it's become very down market in terms of experience.
Yeah, yeah.
And sort of like cars that are being, if you order an Uber Black or you order like an extra space, and what's actually arriving is not in line with what you thought you were getting.
Yes. These are like rebuilt titles, right? That's what.
I remember taking an Uber in Texas, and this F-150 turned up, and I think it was two of us, and we got talking to the driver, and it turned out he was like a private contractor, and he had 3 guns in the car. He did like personal protection.
Oh, like a private investigator.
No, he was like personal protection.
Yeah, okay.
So that was probably the safest Uber I've ever been in.
Or
if things were kicked off, he would be.
Interesting. How'd that come up in conversation?
I think we were talking about how Uber was it a sustainable living in Texas, and he was like, no. I work with the army, and
I'm a hired killer. That's how I supplement my
like private security almost, or like.
We were officially his principal.
Interesting. He's the transporter.
So that's, you're like, which box in the app do I check if I want the driver to be armed for all of my Uber rides?
Oh, it's default in Texas.
I guess that gets the question then, what's the nicest Lyft or Uber you've ever been picking up in? God, picked up in.
Wow.
You tell I went to public schools growing up. Yeah. It's
elocution lessons.
Oh my God. That's,
what cars are
professional writer,
lately?
you know that, right? That's
Well, why didn't we save that for another episode?
That's a whole segment, isn't it?
Well, yeah. But I was going to ask Lindsey, do you avoid any specific car brands or drivers when driving? And obviously you get the night and day difference between California and Washington.
Yeah, I mean, big difference, and I think general approach too, like car, independent of what people are driving, the culture here is like the speed limit is the speed limit, and that's, you don't go over that. And I think that's law enforcement's approach here as well. But in California, it's kind of like the weather's taken into consideration a lot more. The flow of traffic is taken into consideration a lot more. And so it's like, you know what the speed limit is, but depending on the road conditions and everybody. And I feel like that has like kind of amped up in the last few years, and people have talked about it, like since COVID, people are going even more above the speed limit than they used to. And it's kind of, it's not as usable as it used to be, I guess. I don't really have a specific car or brand that catches my attention, but one thing that's always interesting for me is the cars that catch your attention in the rear view mirror because they're driving either so, like going across all the lanes at once, or you just like they are approaching so rapidly that it catches your attention. If you're watching the road and something in the rear view mirror grabs you, you go, okay, I got to watch that one. And so
Usually
then
an old Altima, isn't it?
I mean, I've had it happen with so many different models of cars. And then for me, it's like, okay, I want to get them out of my way. So where am I putting myself to get them by me so that they're ahead of me, or stay ahead of them? But usually they're going so quickly that I'm like, I'm not going to be able to stay ahead of them. So I just want them safely past me down the road. Yeah, it's more driving style than anything for me.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
I see more traffic weaving going on in California than in Washington.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's why when it happens here, it catches my attention even more. And actually, I have experienced it here. It feels like there's been an uptick in it the last 6 months, where it has been feeling more like California roads.
Yeah.
But people have places to be, I guess.
Yeah. I find up here lifted trucks, they're the ones I really are careful with. Yeah. So not the regular trucks, but the lifted ones. Yeah. And they seem like they've got their own rights, they've got their own rules, and if you're not careful, they'll drive over you, not through you.
We got some making up to do. Yeah.
Yeah, and some of those are Rams, and some of those are other brands as well.
Some of them are F-150s.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the lifted ones. I want to be really specific. The lifted ones, not the ones like Lindsey drives.
Right. Yeah, we're gonna make sure everybody's feelings are back to normal. I love SQ5s. You're not attacking F-150.
No truck
We're all
nuts on the
friends.
back of your F-150, Lindsey?
Sorry?
No truck nuts on the back of your...
No.
I didn't realize that was a thing till I moved up here.
Stay classy, America, huh?
Yeah.
I feel like that's you're sending such a specific message if you have chosen to add that to your pickup truck.
That's one way to put it.
I did see a pickup truck with the best sticker ever on the back. So
Yeah.
This was on the back window, and it said, "If I've undertaken you, you're stupid."
Yes. I
don't know
saw
where it
that.
came from. Did you share it, Lindsay? Was it you that shared it?
I was going to
or-
say, I think I saw it on
pedestrian,
Instagram.
right?
I wonder if I
Yeah.
sent it to you guys.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Or it's
So
been
just
making the
remember
rounds.
that.
But yeah, I just saw that this week. I thought that's pretty funny.
Yeah, they're very good. I think that is a show, is it not?
I think you're right.
Hell of a show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who is going to release our famous caption that is trademarked to us? Who wants to do it?
Not me,
Come on.
because I haven't come up with a good way of saying it where it really hits.
I think you should practice. Say 3 different versions from you right now, Ryan. Come on.
What is it again?
You know.
Always be driving.
There
And
we
on
go.
that note, always be driving. Third version, always be driving.
Wow. I feel like I need
Well
to go
done.
right now. I'm going to go for a drive right now.
Right? I feel like
So-
we're in the presence of a broadcasting professional with those 3 options.
Don't worry, you're not.
Yeah. Voiceover specialist.
That's
Right.
Until
in a
next
world.
time, I think we're done, aren't we? So from
Yeah.
me, goodbye.
Bye.
guys.
Thanks, guys. It was great to
Bye.
see you.
Likewise. Bye-bye.